Christmas Eve, 1945. All the boys and girls are in such anticipation for Christmas. This day would end in tragedy for the citizens of Fayetteville, West Virginia. The story would make headlines across the world. It is one of the most tragic events to ever take place in the little Appalachian town's history. The story has more twists and turns than the Appalachian Trail itself. The day would begin as any normal Christmas Eve would, but then it would end in an entire family home turned to ashes and 5 of the children disappearing without a trace. This mystery would never be solved, even today. So who was the family? What is their story? And why are those 5 children missing? Appalachia, the mountains are like no other. From its rigid terrain, beautiful wildlife, to the people that live their lives here, to the strange, unexplained stories that folks share. Join me while I share this amazing place, one story at a time. Before we get into what happened, let's dive into the history and find out who the family was and their story. George Sodder was the father. He was an Italian immigrant who moved to the United States in 1895 when he was only 13 years old. He and his family entered through Ellis Island. When he got older, he got a job working the railroads in Pennsylvania. Then he began driving in Smithers, West Virginia. Then he would start his own company, hauling dirt to construction sites, and then later hauling coal. In 1922, he would marry Jenny Capriani, the daughter of the local storekeep. She had the same story as George, an immigrant from Italy. Later that year, they moved into a 2-story wooden house in Fayetteville, where they would raise 10 children. George's business was successful, and they were a very respectable middle-class family. One thing about George was he was well-spoken about his beliefs, and he strongly believed against Benito Mussolini. This led to arguments with other immigrants in the neighborhood. Just after World War II, when Mussolini was executed for his crimes, George continued to share his opinions on him, which led to hard feelings with people. October 1945, a life insurance agent got into it with George over Mussolini and threatened George and his family, declaring the house would go up in flames and his children would be destroyed. Yet another person in search of a job told George that he needed to replace the fuse box, that it would cause a fire someday. Now this confused George. The fuse box and the wiring were brand new. They were only a few months old because it was previously rewired. Well, a few weeks later, when the new electric stove was installed, the electrician told that it was okay. All the wiring was correctly done and no need to worry. Late November, one of George's older boys told that he noticed a strange car parked on the main highway in the town, and that they were watching the youngest of the children on their way home from school. Then came Christmas Eve. The family celebrated that day. The oldest girl, Marion, surprised the youngest sisters with new toys she bought for them for Christmas. All the kids just loved Christmas. At 10 that night, the girls wanted to stay up a little longer, to which the mother agreed. She headed up with the youngest child and checked on the oldest two boys. They was sleeping, for they had worked all day with their father. Around midnight, the phone rang. The mother got up and answered it, and it seemed to be a strange, unfamiliar woman asking for someone unknown to her. She heard what seemed to be a bar scene, clinking glasses and all. But Miss Sodder told her that she just simply had the wrong number. The strange woman laughed, and then Mrs. Sodder hung up the phone. She noticed that the lights were still on and the windows were wide open, and the curtains were still wide open. And she didn't see the smallest girls, but the oldest was sleeping on the couch. She assumed the girls were up in their room in the attic, fast asleep. She closed the curtains and put out the light and went to sleep. Near an hour later, Miss Sodder awakened from her sleep. She heard a loud thump on the roof, following by the sound of something rolling off of it, but then silence. Since she heard nothing else, she fell asleep. But near half an hour later, Mrs. Sodder was snapped from her sleep, for smoke filled the room. Then she yelled, "George, there's smoke in the room." They sprang to their feet and ran to the hall. George's office was on fire around the phone line and fuse box. The fire spread fast. They woke the four of their older children and sent them outside. They went to head up to the attic. The younger children were sleeping, but the entire staircase was engulfed. They yelled upstairs to raise the children, but no answer. The parents fled the house to safety. They tried to do everything they could to get up to the children. The ladder that leaned against the house every day was mysteriously gone. The water barrel, well, it was frozen solid. The family tried to phone for help, but the phones just wouldn't work. George tried to pull both of his big trucks against the house, but neither would start. The six were in tears as they watched the place literally burn to the ground, helplessly. They assumed that the 5 children burned to death. The fire department didn't have very many men due to the World War II going on. It took a passerby going halfway across town to call for help. It took till morning till they finally came. They searched the carnage, but strangely, there was no bodies to be found. Mrs. Sodder's own brother, Morris, was the chief, and it's told he found a few bone fragments and a small amount of organ tissue, but chose to not tell, to keep it to himself. Modern-day fire professionals claim that their search was not close to thorough at all, while the firefighters searched through the carnage. The Sodder brother believed that the 5 had passed in the fire, but said it was nowhere near hot enough to completely burn up the bodies. Morris told everyone to not disturb the area until the fire marshal could do a thorough investigation. After 4 days, George in his grief could no longer stand to see the place, so he bulldozed 5 feet of dirt over the site, burying it. He intended to build a memorial garden in the children's memory. The local coroner did an inquiry to which he determined the accident was due to faulty wiring. December 30th, the 5 children's death certificate was issued. The children's funeral service was held January the 2nd, 1946. Strangely, the 4 surviving children attended, but Mr. and Mrs. Sodder did not attend due to being so grief-stricken. The father gathered what was left of their tattered lives, and the 5 started over. They often questioned the official report. If the fire was due to wiring, then why did the Christmas lights stay on? And then a short time later, the telephone repairman told Mr. Sodder the phone line didn't burn in half. It was actually cut by someone climbing 15 feet up the pole and then reaching out 2 more feet. The neighbors reported a man fleeing the area of the fire, and he had stolen a block and tackle from the farm. The man was caught and admitted to the theft, and also claiming to cut the line, but he thought it was the power. But strangely, no records seem to exist to say who the man was or of him even being charged at all. Mrs. Sodder told that they all would have perished if the power was cut, for they wouldn't be able to see to get out. And she just couldn't believe that the house fire could be so hot enough to burn up the bodies. She contacted a local crematory, and she was told that it would have to be 2,000 degrees to even start burning the body, and it would have to stay 2,000 degrees for 2 hours continuously to destroy the bodies completely. A house fire never comes close to those temperatures. The following spring, Mrs. Sodder planted flowers on the ground over where the house fire was, and she would take care of this place until her death. Early 1946, a few developments in the case led the family to believe that the kids were indeed kidnapped that night. On the night of the tragic event, a bus driver saw folks throwing balls of fire at the house. When winter passed and the ground thawed, Mrs. Sodder found a small green rubber object in the brush near the site. She recalled that it looked like a hand grenade or an incendiary device from combat. The family claimed that the fire was started on the roof, not in the walls of the office, as the fire marshal claimed. They just didn't have any way to prove it. The Sodders got C.C. Tinsley, a private investigator, to look into the case. He found something very interesting. The insurance salesman who threatened George back in October was on the coroner's jury, the same one that ruled the fire an accident. The man also heard of rumors going around the town that despite Morris reporting no remains being found in the remains of the fire, but he had indeed found a human heart, then buried it in a metal box. Detective Tinsley found out Morris confessed to a minister of this deed. George went to the minister, and he indeed confirmed of the man's confession. Detective Tinsley and Mr. Sodder confronted Morris. He confessed and led them to the metal box containing the remains. They were collected and sent for testing. Morris proclaimed he was simply trying to protect them from seeing such terrible sight. In a strange twist, the test determined it was none of the children at all. It wasn't even a heart, rather a liver, but not human. It was beef liver. Where did it come from? Well, in a later confession, Morris told it wasn't from the fire at all. He had placed it in the site so that the Sodders would find it and assumed that all the children had passed away in the fire. Makes you wonder, why did he do this? Was he covering something up? 3 years later, still trying to convince someone that his children were alive and kidnapped, he sent letters to J. Edgar Hoover himself. He responded by letter, but not what Mr. Sodder wanted to hear. Mr. Hoover told that the case was a state issue out of the federal jurisdiction. In August, Mr. Sodder convinced a pathologist from Washington, D.C. to supervise a search through the dirt where the house once stood. They made a startling discovery. They found a child's dictionary and coins, but there in the dirt was bone fragments, human bone fragments. They were collected and sent to the Smithsonian for further testing. It was determined to be the lumbar vertebra from a 22-year-old male, far older than even the oldest child, 14 years old. Strangely, the bone had never seen fire. Who did this bone belong to, and where did it come from? Well, Detective Tinsley found the answer to that too. He determined the bone fragment was in fact from Mount Hope Cemetery, where Mr. Sodder had gotten the dirt to cover the site. Mr. Sodder accidentally disturbed a grave. Somehow, the next year, the West Virginia legislature heard of the investigation and its findings, so they held 2 hearings on the case. Governor Patterson and State Police Superintendent Burchett told the family the case was hopeless, so they simply closed it at the state level. The FBI took up the case soon after, but in 1952 dropped the case due to no evidence and fruitless leads. The family then offered a $5,000 reward and had a billboard placed along U.S. Route 60. This paid off. A hotel owner from Charleston reported seeing all 5 children with 2 men and 2 women, all looking Italian. She didn't remember the exact date, but told they came in around midnight. When she tried to speak to the children, one of the men gave her a bad look, acting hostilely, then began talking to the children fast as he could go in Italian. From then on, the whole group avoided her, never looking in her direction. The next morning, they were gone. This looked very hopeful, but the more investigators looked into the story, it quickly fell apart. They believed the woman made up the story after seeing a newspaper report 2 years prior. Then once she seen that money was involved, she cooked up the story. This broke the Sodder's heart. Mr. Sodder would go wherever the leads were, but all ended in disappointment. In 1967, a woman wrote a letter saying that Louis Sodder revealed his identity to her after drinking way too much. She believed that Louis and Maurice were living in Texas somewhere. The police looked into the story, contacted the 2 men to be the missing 2. Both were not. Later the same year, another letter came in. This one brought hope to the Sodder family. A letter from Central City, Kentucky, with no return address was sent to the Sodder family home. Inside was only a single photo of a male adult. He looked a lot like Louis, but only grown up. The photo read, Louis Sodder, I love brother frankly, A 90132 or 35. The Sodder would hire yet another detective to find Louis, but to no avail. They added the photo to the billboard, but nothing ever came of it. Sadly, in 1969, Mr. Sodder passed away, never knowing the truth of his 5 children. Mrs. Sodder wore black mourning clothes until she passed in 1989. The last of the Sodder children that was in the house fire that night passed in 2021. The living families still hunt for their lost loved ones. Some modern researchers say that the children died way back in 1945. Others believe they are still out there somewhere. So, what happened that fateful night 80 years ago? Did the children burn to death in the attic as the house collapsed? Did they get taken Was the fire deliberately set? Was the family involved? Are the coincidences simply coincidence? Or is something deeper going on here? Only the good Lord above can ever answer these questions. Folks, I want to thank you for sitting and listening to the tragic tale of the missing 5 Sodder children. I appreciate you listening. I love you to pieces. And I'll see you next time.